Now it's time to dig into the details of our workflows. In this lesson, we're going to walk through the workflow that sends data to Jobber. Now, inside our workflow list, you'll see all these folders organized by system. Let's jump back to the process map to see exactly where this workflow fits in. This snapshot contains 8 workflows total, 4 in capture, 1 in conversion, 1 in onboarding, and 2 in delivery. The workflow that sends data to Jobber is workflow number 4, create Jobber client right here. So this workflow is triggered by a tag, and its goal is to create a Jobber client, a Jobber property, and update the GHL contact. So let's go into our workflow and take a look at this. Once the workflow is triggered, it performs several checks. First, it checks to see if there's an opportunity associated with the contact. If it finds one, it checks whether the contact already has a Jobber client ID. If the client ID does not exist, it creates a new client and property in Jobber. It then saves the response, including the IDs, back to the contact and the opportunity in HighLevel. If the Jobber ID does exist, it then checks all the properties linked to that client to look for a match based on address. If it finds a match, it saves that property ID to the opportunity. If no match is found, it creates a property and links that instead. Now, this might look a little complex with all the conditionals, but I want to introduce a concept that makes sense of this structure, and it's essential for building reliable automations. It's the concept of idempotence. In simple terms, an idempotent system is one that can run multiple times and produce the same result without duplicates. This matters because if a client gets retagged or the workflow runs again for any reason, such as a repeat customer, we don't want to create duplicate records in Jobber. That's why we built in checks like, does this client already exist? And does this property already exist? Designing for idempotence makes sure that we only create new data when needed. Otherwise, we update existing records. So let's look at the custom webhook steps in this workflow. We'll start with the fetch client properties step. It's one of the simpler ones. You'll notice that we're sending a request to Jobber, and we include 2 things: our authorization token, which we've already discussed in a previous video, and a version header, which Jobber requires. Now, here's where things get interesting. Instead of using a traditional REST API, Jobber uses GraphQL. What is GraphQL? Well, if you've worked with the GoHighLevel API before, you're familiar with REST, where you hit specific endpoints like /contacts or /opportunities. With GraphQL, you don't hit a fixed endpoint. Instead, you send a query describing exactly what data you want, and only that data is returned. GraphQL is more flexible, more efficient, and very readable once you get the hang of it. So to help you write and test these queries, Jobber gives you access to GraphiQL, their built-in developer tool. To access it, you can go to your Jobber developer dashboard, find your app, click the 3 dots, and choose Test in GraphiQL. In this interface, you can write queries and mutations, explore the available objects and fields, and test requests and view real-time responses. So I've included a couple links in the video description, one comparing GraphQL and REST, and a walkthrough of how to use GraphiQL to build and test your own queries. Here's an example of a query that we used in the integration, the get client properties. This was the one that we were just looking at. It's a query, meaning it's read only. We're not making any changes. We're just retrieving data. So here we're asking for the client ID, first and last name, and their properties, up to 10 properties. And for each property, we want to include the property ID and address. You'll notice nodes here. The nodes object works like an array. It holds a list of items. You can loop through them just like you would in any other programming environment. If you want to create or update data in Jobber, you'll use a mutation instead. Here's an example. Here, we're creating a client and a property to go along with it. The input determines the data that is saved. And then down here, this is the data that we want returned: the client ID, first and last name for readability, and the property ID. All the available field types, input types, and response structures are in the Documentation Explorer that can be accessed right here. Once you've tested your query or mutation and it works in GraphiQL, you can copy it, and then it's time to move into HighLevel. But there's a catch. GHL's custom webhook action only accepts valid JSON, and JSON has very strict rules for formatting strings. That means you can't include line breaks in your query string, you must escape all double quotes, and you need to wrap the entire query in a single string under a query key. You can see that that is how we have this laid out here. So how can you take the query from GraphiQL and turn it into this? Well, there's a couple tools that we can use. First one is a JSON escape or unescape tool. And I've taken the get client properties query and removed all the line breaks and added in a high-level merge field, the one that we're going to be using here. And then I can simply click escape JSON. And this is the data that we can use in our high-level request. So we can go back to HighLevel, and we can just create a simple query here. Double quotes, the word query, semicolon, quotes, and we're going to paste our string in there. There. Now we've got a perfectly formatted string. And of course, I recommend always testing your queries if at all possible. So to reiterate, you need to write and test your query in GraphiQL, format it correctly as a JSON string, use merge fields with proper escaping of the double quotes, and then paste it into your custom webhook in GoHighLevel. In the next section, we'll walk through some of the live webhook examples and review how we can receive data back from Jobber.